Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye coverage of the 2014 elections continues with an interview with Jerry Shidell of Rhinelander. He's a Libertarian candidate for state treasurer. Jerry, welcome to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you for having me.
Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. Jerry, let's start out. Give us your background and why you're running.
Well, I was a former mayor of the city of Rhinelander, and I did serve on the city council, and I've also served on Oneida County Board of Supervisors in Oneida County, which is where Rhinelander is located. And it was, I guess, back in 1976 when I first cast my first Libertarian ballot vote, and was on the city council, and then I ran for the mayor's position. And it was interesting because as I walked through town talking with businessmen, they all talked about minimal government, et cetera, all the proper words that people would say about cutting government. And no sooner do I get elected to the office, get sworn in, than this same group of businessmen start parading into my office, all demanding that government do something for them. A new parking lot, or take away the parking meters, or whatever it happens to be, all for the benefit of their particular business or their particular special interest. And it dawned on me at that point in time that it's not the words that are spoken, it's the actions that are taken. And if we keep that big government there, that lever there, there's always going to be people that want to pull that lever to their advantage. So we need to eliminate as much as we can, take away as many levers as we can, to really effectively reduce the regulatory burden and overreach of government.
Well, now you've said that you've run some of your own businesses, and now you're semi-retired.
Yes.
Well, what draws you in 2014 to run as a Libertarian for state treasurer, which, how many people does it have on its payroll? 3 or 4?
3.
Three?
3, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, as I just mentioned, my epiphany, my total and complete change to libertarianism involved the fact that we just weren't seeming to reduce the size of government. I'm not a wealthy individual, but I have done okay in business. I've operated many of them over the last 35 years and owned them all. And so now all of a sudden I find myself in a position where I'm semi-retired. I have the time, I have some resources that I can commit to it, and I thought, you know what, here is my one chance to try to make a difference in the size of government. The state treasurer's position is so ridiculously useless, if I want to use that word.
What functions are left of the state treasurer job? Sorry for interrupting.
It's a very fair question, and it's a very easy one to answer. There's basically 2 duties that the state treasurer has. Affix his signature to state checks. Oh, why? That's done by a machine. And secondly, to take 2 phone calls a month from the Bureau of Public Lands. Those 2 phone calls consist of the Bureau staff saying, we've now received an application from, let's say, Rhinelander or Madison or Antigo or any city or entity of some sort, school district or whatever, in the state. They meet our criteria for a loan from our trust funds. We suggest that you okay it. So the Secretary of State, the Treasurer, and the Attorney General go boom, boom, boom.
No, that's done by phone. It's not even
all done by phone.
Okay.
And so they rubber stamp, with very rare exceptions, what the Bureau of Public Lands staff recommends they grant the loan to. Really, that's it.
So there's only 2 functions left and 3 full-time.
3 full-time employees. Now, when I gave my first interview for a newspaper, I said that there were these 2 duties. So they did their due diligence, called the secretary, the state treasurer's office, and asked what the duties were. And they said there were over 100 duties for the state treasurer. I read that in the article and I went, oh my goodness, did I blow this? Did I really stick my foot in my mouth? So I called the state treasurer's office and I asked them what were the duties of the state treasurer. The response was, there are over 100 mentions in the state statutes of the state treasurer.
It's a constitutional office.
It's a constitutional office with 100 mentions. Did you catch that difference?
Okay.
Duties versus mentions?
Yes.
I said, do you have a list of them? Well, no, we don't. So I asked where I could find it, and I went to the site and I looked them up. And yes, there are mentions. Things such as the state treasurer will provide a bond to make sure you're going to execute your office. What happens if the state treasurer's office is vacated? All these are mentions of the name state treasurer, but no duties other than signature and taking these 2 phone calls. So I decided that at this point in time, this position is just got to go.
What's the annual budget, the state treasurer? Do you know?
Over $500,000 a
Over
year.
$500,000.
Right.
Well, you've got a very interesting campaign slogan. Go ahead and give it to us, to Wisconsinite watchers.
Hire me, then fire me.
But let's talk about the fire me part, because it's a constitutional office. It would take passage of 2 sessions of the ledge,
Yes.
then a referendum.
Yes.
So if you're elected state treasurer, you're a libertarian. Why would, let's make the assumption that Democrats and Republicans are going to continue to control the Capitol. Why would they work with you, a libertarian, not a member of either party?
A really good question. I think I have several reasons why they might decide that this is the time. One, as a libertarian sitting in the office of the state treasurer, I now give the red and the blue team great political cover to actually go forward and eliminate the job.
Okay.
They've talked about doing it many, many times. There's actually been articles in papers 50, 60 years ago, and it never seems to get done. So I give them great political cover. I'm in the position. It appears as though the citizens want to take a vote on whether or not to keep this position. Let's put it out there on the ballot going through the process you just described. Secondly, I'm not going to receive any political pressure from above. At that point, there would be nobody above the state treasurer. I would be the highest office for the Libertarian Party. So I'm not going to receive the pressure to keep this cozy little job for a great party loyalist who may happen to get elected to it. So I'm not going to be subject to that pressure. And I'm also retired. I am not seeking and have no ambition for higher office than state treasurer. My number one job, if I get this job, is to eliminate this job.
Are you going to lay off the other 2 employees?
I will make it very clear to them that I'm going to operate on the assumption that I can get this done and they should start to look for another job. There's a lot of turnover in state government, and it is going to take some time to eliminate the position. So it would seem to me that they would have plenty of time to secure another governmental job if they wish, or go out into the private sector.
Because it's a constitutional job, does it have to function in the city of Madison, or would you be able to do it from your home
Rhinelander?
up north, Rhinelander?
If you take only 2 phone calls a month, I would suspect the phones still work in Rhinelander and could probably be handled up there.
So you don't think the office has to officially be in Madison?
It wouldn't officially have to be in Madison to my knowledge, but the beauty of being in Madison is that you would then have the ability to go directly to legislative offices and sit down with the different assembly people and senators and say, look, I'm here because the people want to get rid of this job. Let's start the process. Let's move it forward. I could work with them. And hopefully, because I'm not a red or a blue, I could probably, hopefully, cross the divides and get them to work together to eliminate the position.
Now, you say on your campaign website there's not a whit bit of difference between a Republican and a Democrat when it comes to this position.
None of them have been able to get rid of it.
Okay.
That's the whole key. There's been rhetoric throughout the years that they want to get rid of this position. The current state treasurer, that's what he ran on. And then he has some type of change of heart and claims that it is constitutionally complicated to get rid of it and that it should be given more powers and more duties. And he changes his mind and the job doesn't get done.
What's the salary for state treasurer? I used to know and forgot.
It is $68,000 a year.
You're going to accept all that? You're going to take part of it? You're going to return part of it?
Here's what I'm going to do. If during the first 2 years I have not been able to convince the first session of the legislature to eliminate the position, because then you have to go to the second session. But if during that first session I have not convinced them to eliminate it, the second 2 years of the term, I will donate half the salary to charity. No, I will not return it to the government. They do not spend money wisely. I know that nonprofit charitable organizations are watching every dollar as closely and as carefully as they can. So I will donate it to them, and I will make a public accounting of who I've donated that money.
And that's the third. If you're elected to a 4-year term.
Correct.
So you would return half of your salary in the third year of
third and the fourth year,
yes.
if I have not convinced the legislature to pass it during that first session. Then if they do pass it, I retain the right to keep the salary. However, I will probably still honor that commitment and donate it to charity, but work very, very hard to make sure that it gets eliminated. Because theoretically, if everything worked right, you could end up in 2 years and 4 months having the job gone.
I guess my question is, having covered the Capitol for a bit and watching them spend more every year or in every budget, what assurance, you can't really offer any assurance that if you save taxpayers $500,000, that savings is going to be passed on, can you, Jerry?
No, absolutely you cannot, because it's entirely up to the legislature. Just like all the duties excuse me, all the duties and powers of the state treasurer's position are given to the state treasurer by the legislature. So they have the total control over not only the office's duties and powers, but of course the budget of the state of Wisconsin. So can you give that guarantee? Absolutely not. You'd be a fool to say you could. But what you have at least done is you've cut out $500,000, and now it's up to the legislature to keep that $500,000 out of the budget.
Candidates for Secretary of State and State Treasurer fall in one of two camps: abolish the job or make the job more meaningful. Sure. What do you say to people who say give back some of what had been the powers of the State Treasurer's office, make it more meaningful? You just don't see that at all, right?
There's a problem with giving it back to the office. Bureaucracies never seem to shrink. So if you throw some duties there, are those duties which are now being handled by other departments going to be reducing their budgets if you're going to give this department more? I doubt it. If you give this department more, then what happens with bureaucracies is inevitably they ask for more money. They want more power. They want more control. They want more things to be done. The legislature, because it has total control over this office's powers and duties, has chosen to give it virtually none. The next logical step, in my opinion, is just eliminate the office. Then we don't have this potential for another bureaucracy to grow and expand and take up even more money and create more regulation and more power.
Okay.
For that office.
How are you campaigning? I mean, obviously, thanks for doing the Wisconsin Eye show, but are you actually spending money on campaign, the traditional ways of campaigning, sir?
Because libertarians have a very hard time fundraising and getting publicity, I am actually in my car driving around. I just completed an interview in Watertown, Wisconsin at 7 a.m. this morning. And now after this one, I will be going to another public television interview, or actually statement, where they're allowing us 4 minutes. And then I've got 3 more interviews scheduled for today, and hopefully be able to put in another 4 or 5. So I am literally traveling around the state, going to different small newspapers and asking them if they want to do an interview. And so far the response has been great. I've gone to county fairs, I've gone to gun shows, and if I'm on the street and early for an appointment, I go into the businesses around. So yeah, I'm putting in the time and the effort, but I will not be able to put ads on the major television networks. I will not be able to buy ads in the major newspapers because we simply don't have the funds.
So when you go to a county fair, basically you're saying, I'm so-and-so running for state treasurer, hire me so you can fire me.
That's it exactly. And what inevitably happens is when I say hire me then fire me, I get a smile, I get a chuckle, and then I get that look of, what? And then I proceed to explain why I think this office needs to go and what the process is. If they hire me, then they fire me.
Oh, okay. Well, is there any other part of your campaign we haven't touched on, Jerry? Any other campaign themes?
Yes. One of the things that, and you somewhat alluded to it, were a third party. And when people are faced with a tight election like they are this campaign season, where it appears as though the governor's race is going to be very, very tight, they may not feel like they wanted to waste their vote on a libertarian in a particular office because they feel they're taking it away from somebody who they may have an allegiance to, but they don't want the other person to get it. If you take the state treasurer's office, it virtually has no powers. It has no authority to veto a law, enact a law, heck, it can't even propose a law. It has virtually no influence whatsoever on state politics. It's basically just there because it says it has to be there because it's in the Constitution. So here's a perfect opportunity for the people in the state of Wisconsin to put a libertarian in the office, knowing they're not going to affect any other policy or any other laws that could come along by having to vote for a libertarian. They may be taking it away from somebody who they kind of agree with. In this particular position, you would send a pointed, a very sharp, and a very powerful message to the legislators in Madison. This job's got to go. And we've put a libertarian there to do it. So now let's get the job done. No, you're not wasting your vote this time. You're actually making a very powerful statement in an office that needs to go. And trust me, a red or blue team member doesn't want to fire another red or blue team member. But if there's a libertarian in the state treasurer's office, I can just about guarantee you they'd love to get him fired. And I would be honored to be fired by the citizens of Wisconsin.
Jerry, thank you. Jerry Shidell of Rhinelander is a libertarian candidate for state treasurer. Jerry, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you for having me.
You bet.